Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I'm John Pollock alongside Wai Ting, live on a Wednesday night, a special live edition for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe tonight. As Wai Ting woke up this morning and he thought of blood, guts, and Patreon perks.
Oh, of course. Yeah, blood, guts, and Zoom, of course, yeah.
The final frontier that it was. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, not bad. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Okay. Why? Any reasons in particular that you'd like to share?
It was raining for a bit today, and then it stopped raining. That put me in a good mood.
Don't like the rain?
Well, it was more so I was planning to go out, and that required walking, and then the rain stopped in time for me to go out. So that really coordinated timing-wise, so I appreciated that part.
Where did you go?
I went to a big party. There was about 50 of us. No, I went to go grab a coffee. That was my big outing for the day.
Exciting, man.
Yeah, exciting as shit.
Yeah.
Did you get out today? Do much?
I also went to grab a coffee, but it was via car. So
by car. Oh my.
By car,
something
yeah.
A specialty?
A specialty? No, it was just in the middle of dropping Pauline off. That's all.
Okay.
So, not that exciting. I'm sorry.
Where'd you get your coffee at?
I went to this place called Chavetta Coffee on Bathurst.
Fancy.
Yeah, it was really not that fancy. I just got a regular coffee.
Did you go in? Was it drive-through?
I went in. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know many drive-through coffee places except like McDonald's. There's like, anyway, let's move
on. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
We got the big blood and guts show to get through tonight, and up on the site, going to make quick mention of some shows that we have dropped recently. We have a big interview up there with Drew McIntyre of WWE chatting about his new book. We've also got Rewind-A-Raw from Monday with a big discussion on the Randy Savage A&E biography that many people are discussing the content of. We also have up next from the BDE Tower, whatever they're naming their new headquarters. That is up, covering a very strong edition of NXT from Tuesday night. And then coming up this week, we've got our big Rewind Away dropping Friday with myself, Phil Chertok, and Eric Marcotte discussing Affliction Band.
Mm-hmm. Affliction Band, yeah. MMA show somehow featuring Fedor Emelianenko, Tim Sylvia, and Donald Trump.
All rolled into one, yes, including The Undertaker with his Affliction jeans in the front row. Stone Steve Austin, as Michael Buffer introduced him.
Stone Steve Austin, wow. It is a slice
Steve Austin.
It is quite the slice of, what, 2009? 2008, yeah.
Quite the time. So that's dropping on Friday, and the whole schedule is up at postwrestling.com, and check it all out. We'll be back on Friday night after Throwback SmackDown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of Post Wrestling Cafe perks at the beginning of the month here. We also have our New Japan Dontaku review that just went up yesterday. So we thank everybody who's joined up with us for May.
Yes, and for those that maybe are not aware, we are live. Double Ice Cap and Espresso patrons, we are live every Monday and Wednesday after Raw, after Dynamite, and then all patrons get live access after SmackDown on Friday nights, where we open up the phone lines. But we will take some calls at the end of tonight's show, correct?
Yeah, let's do it. It's a big show.
All right, let's go through some news items. The big one, this coming from Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful, who reported this on Tuesday night, that last week, Daniel Bryan's contract expired. This coming in conjunction with the Roman Reigns match on SmackDown. We were able to confirm this on our end as well. And Dave Meltzer adding that the WWE is vigorously trying to sign Bryan. But it would appear, Wai, that as of now, Daniel Bryan would not be contractually obligated to WWE. It doesn't mean that he is gone, that he's not going to return or resign, but it looks at this point like his contract is up, and that is naturally going to open up a lot of speculation and what Daniel Bryan sees as his next step in his career.
Quite amazing that, I mean, this news just kind of crept out of nowhere from, Fightful yesterday, that the fact that we were really just talking about how little fanfare, or at least, in terms of ratings, that match received on Friday. And lo and behold, like, there was actually some real life consequences potentially attached to it, and what a small deal it was. I mean, I guess if you're the WWE, you're not looking at this as any sort of final goodbye, but the possibility does exist. And so the speculation of where Daniel Bryan might end up just got a lot more interesting than simply just NXT or Raw.
Do you foresee that there's just a big gap, that maybe he's just going to take time off now? Like, the story has set it up for him to disappear. I don't think this would be something where let's race to get back onto television immediately. I would think for himself after this, he probably, this guy's been going hard for this entire pandemic. I mean, he has been one of the consistent people on television every single week, that I'm sure he's looking for, time to assess. And then if it's WWE, come back at a more opportune time.
He has some incredible leverage right now that I think he should absolutely just sit back and enjoy and really take his time before making a decision. It's really difficult to be in a position like this when you're wrapped up in, contracts that often are as long as they are with this company. And the world is just so big for creativity right now for somebody like him, to be able to enjoy. So certainly as a fan, I think we all want to see him explore options outside of this current system. There's so much potential for him to do things out of it. He's talked about it himself. We know he watches other products. I've heard people, speculate whether or not he would leave the WWE because of his wife. I don't think that really has any bearing, Brie Bella, even if she's going to make a potential comeback, Total Bellas, all that stuff will be fine with or without Bryan. So I'm really curious to see where he moves. I mean, I'm sure the WWE is doing everything they can to try to keep him.
He has a lot when money is not the driving factor. And I mean, the last time Bryan's deal was up, it was right around the time of All In, and that was 2018. It's a completely different landscape now. It's now what's out there to a deeper extent, and you've seen other people leave, and some flourish and some not. But I'm sure that, he is someone that has paid attention to all of that it's going to come down. It's very clear. He's been open about the fact he wants to have a deal where he can have a relationship with WWE, but not an exclusive one. And I think that Vince McMahon has a great deal of respect for Daniel Bryan. I just cannot, and I think that this guy has some real leverage. I don't think they want to lose him. I just cannot see them agreeing to that for anyone, given their entire global expansion plan of going to all these places and having their own satellite companies. You had Nick Khan just talk about this in Mexico. Our goal is not to go and buy one of these existing companies. It's to create our own. So the idea of letting Daniel Bryan go, forget AEW. I don't think that would even be in the question, but even entertaining a CMLL or a New Japan or a Noah, any of these, I just cannot see WWE pulling the trigger on that kind of a deal.
If there's anybody who could make it work, I feel like Bryan happens to be in a position right now where we would be able to get closest to somebody who might be able to concurrently wrestle within the WWE while also those other companies. I agree with you that AEW, as we've talked about, will probably completely be likely off the table. But I think that's all WWE, in my opinion, would probably care about at this point, making sure that AEW does not have one of their megastars joining their show, because they are the people that pose, the most direct competition to them. Anything else, like if Bryan wants to work New Japan, as long as it is safe and doesn't, collide with like a WrestleMania or something, if I'm WWE, I would let him just get that out of his system. It's like, this is like a long-term relationship where like, the guy, somebody, your partner wants a break and you let them explore and hopefully they come back and you have a happy rest of your life together in the future. But, yeah, definitely don't see. Yeah, no, it's interesting. We'll see what happens.
So Tony Khan was on Busted Open Radio today and revealed a couple news items. The major one being that they're planning to run Double or Nothing May 30th at Daly's Place at full capacity. This would include a whole weekend where, as we had mentioned, because of the NBA playoffs, Dynamite would be live on the Friday. Then Saturday, they're looking at doing some kind of fan fest. And then Sunday would be the pay-per-view. This comes after the Machine Gun Kelly concert at Daly's Place that was sold out. And, I mean, there's nothing stopping AEW from doing this. And, I mean, we have seen so far the concert at Daly's Place. We have not heard really of any instances coming out of the UFC 261 event, which was indoors at full capacity. So this is kind of in the middle of, well, it's identical really to the concert setup with Machine Gun Kelly. But do you think like this is the next step to take if you're AEW, or do you think that this is getting a bit too far ahead of yourself, even with the vaccination process as it is?
It's too far for my own personal comfort level, but I mean, in Florida, I really don't know what things are like exactly down there. From the sounds of it, it seems like COVID is just suddenly non-existent. And if you see some of these shows that aren't professional wrestling, it's, it really does make you wonder. This is going to be met with criticism by some people, but by others, it's like, they probably feel like AEW has been waiting enough to before executing something like this.
This is the direction everything's going. Like New York, they're getting ready to open up Broadway later this year. Sports leagues in New York are going to be open to vaccinated fans. I mean, everything's going this direction, and I think you have to rely on what data they have from that Machine Gun Kelly concert. If that came out and they don't see any red flags from that, that's kind of the data they're probably leaning on.
Are they contact tracing for these events? Like, how would they even know?
I don't know what is in place for these.
Yeah, right. Well, I at least wonder, like, what sort of...
There is risk here. There is absolutely risk here. And that's...
Well, take tonight, John. Like, how many people attending tonight do you feel like were vaccinated? Certainly, like, what seemed to be a mask mandate was not necessarily adhered to, at least from what we saw during the Judas walkout. Social distancing, I even question too, because like JR mentioned that they were socially distanced, but I couldn't really tell.
They'd thrown out the number of around 1,500 were there tonight, so this was that was their largest since the pandemic.
So 5,000 would be Double or Nothing.
Around 5 to 5,500 in that range.
Okay.
Depending on like your production kills and everything. Listen, it's, you are definitely going to be met with some criticism. At the same time, it's like all these events are going in this direction. I think WWE is being much more cautious than I would have expected them to be in all of this. And I don't know if part of that is they've invested so much in this Thunderdome technology that they're also not in the situation where they'd be in a static location week after week like AEW is. They would, like, once they flip the switch, they're touring all over the place again. They're not going to be staying in one place for Raw, one place for SmackDown. So it's like once they're ready to go, they have to be completely on board with returning to live events. So it's a bit of a heavier undertaking for WWE than it is AEW now, as they're just increasing capacity. New Japan, on that front, have announced that 2 wrestlers have tested positive for COVID-19. This comes after several people were removed from the second night of Dontaku. They have not released the names of those involved, but there is the gap now until May 15th when they're running that Yokohama Stadium show that still has 1 match announced. So we are awaiting a card for Yokohama Stadium in 10 days.
That's crazy. But, again, these aren't like your typical stadium shows in that they have to fill the entire stadium. At this point, like what is a crowd even?
5,000 people is what they can put in this. And I do not see them putting anywhere close to 5,000 in the stadium.
Right. Yeah. You have to wonder what the public
It's really bad in Japan. Like, I was reading today about just how behind they are when it comes to the vaccination process. It is very bad there.
Yeah, it's too bad. And if you're a typical person, are you even thinking about going to, watch a wrestling show with 5,000 people knowing that the situation is like that?
I mean, what we have learned is that no matter what, 300 people will show up at Korakuen Hall if you put New Japan on the marquee. They will get their 300 people, as they have throughout this whole time period. No matter how many times a week they're running Korakuen, they'll get their 350.
It's sort of like the green shirt guy, but in Korakuen Hall, like their own version of like the usual Performance Center crowd.
You know what's crazy about that stadium show? I didn't realize the start time of it. So it's May 15th, which is the Saturday, but it's really like the Friday night. It's at midnight on the Friday.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure out what we're doing on that night.
Just on the COVID front, I mean, Tommy Dreamer, did you read about his diagnosis? And
no, I did not. Did not see that.
So he just came out today talking about like battling COVID for the past like 3 weeks, it sounds like, and he shared some pretty like nasty details. He caught it on a trip to Alaska to working for an independent promotion, and independent promotion kind of let everybody know like one of the wrestlers who was there tested positive, but I guess they left it up to the performers, and he chose to work the show and ultimately got sick. And he just like detailed some of the symptoms that he's been struggling with. Unfortunately, like passed it on to like his wife, and yeah, it sounded really rough. So we wish him the best, of course.
There's been some like stories like primarily like I'm following of like MMA fighters, but like Khamzat Chimaev like has had a brutal bout with it. Sage Northcutt as well. Like there are some really awful cases of it, involving people that we are covering, and I think like that's a reminder. I think that comes every so often of people that have gotten it extremely bad, and I think that's worth reminding people that as much as like there's this light at the end of the tunnel for some, it's like we're not out of the woods yet. And speaking for you and I do not even detect that light yet. It is a completely different scenario for us here of how far things are going at.
Yeah, we're in better shape than like, obviously like many parts of the world.
This is not India. India, it is just a nightmare.
Yeah, I've got my shot booked for tomorrow, so my first one, and hopefully the rest of Toronto will get there soon. But at least there's some optimism, I think. But yeah, the rest of we're not going to get out of this thing until the whole world gets out of it. So yeah, our thoughts with everybody.
We're not going to Double or Nothing.
No, I don't think so. No.
So MLW had their season finale on Wednesday, and there was actually some pretty newsworthy items coming out of it. So for months, they have been building.
So okay, spoiler alert, everybody, in case you care.
Yes, we definitely need a rule on what the length of time is. So yes, spoiler warning. So they have been building up their Azteca Underground storyline for months at this point, and we got the big reveal at the end of the show. Last week, Selena De La Renta had been kidnapped and brought to Boyle Heights, put into the office, and there is El Jefe, Dario Cueto, and he's coming to Philadelphia July 10th, as MLW is going to be at the 2300 Arena, and this looks to be, Dario Cueto kind of running his satellite group, counter to MLW, and this is like the big angle they have been building for months and months towards this reveal tonight. So, I mean, Dario Cueto, just a fantastic performer. I think most until like Lucha Underground kind of fell off a cliff by the end, where he died, and then it was his father who he was playing. Brutal. But the early seasons, I mean, this guy was one of the highlights of a series that was very popular for those that were following I would say the first 2 to 3 seasons.
So are we following Lucha Underground like timeline here, or are we branching off into
this is Dario Cueto, so he's back to life in MLW.
Interesting. Okay.
He might have been resurrected towards the end, but that is a real blur to me. The end of Lucha Underground is like WCW in the year 2000 for me.
A very beloved promotion, and throughout the season, throwing those little teasers, I definitely think got people talking. So this is it's going to be news to your typical audience who watches MLW, who probably a good cross section of people watch Lucha Underground as well. Who owns the rights to Lucha Underground?
I mean, it would still be like factory made, but they're not calling it Lucha Underground. They're calling it Azteca Underground.
Are they calling him Dario Cueto?
I don't think they even named him, but
okay.
I'm sure they're going to go by that name. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, there's obviously like a working, that they can move ahead with this. So their next shows, they'll be off now until their next show is going to be their live event at the 2300 Arena, July 10th. And then they've got shows September in Dallas and November the 6th at Cicero Stadium in Chicago. And they also did the title change of Myron Reed winning the middleweight title, which was a very good match that the two had. And also explaining why Laredo Kid is back to being, or was always, the AAA Cruiserweight champion. It's a very sordid story, and they tried to make sense of it with showing footage of their match where Leo Rush pounded the mat, and they signified that Laredo Kid took that as a tap, even though the announcers disagreed. It's a very confusing story, but that's why Laredo Kid had the AAA Cruiserweight title on this particular episode. But that was the season finale. So a lot that they have set up for when they return. And they're going to do an open draft starting next week, where I guess they're going to be announcing maybe some additions to the roster. And the big match that they're setting up is down the road, Jacob Fatu against Alex Hammerstone, where Joseph Samael is blocking Hammerstone as a challenger. So Hammerstone's one way to get this title shot is winning the 40-man Battle Riot, which is their kind of Royal Rumble type of match. So those are the big news items coming out of Wednesday's finale. And ratings notes, I think I'm just going to leave it to NXT. There's like a lot of ratings notes. They're all up on the site for everybody to check out. But in a nutshell, NXT on Tuesday did 761,000 viewers, but the demo was down to a 0.18. So down 18% from last week, but also below their 4-week average that they have had since moving to Tuesdays. In fact, all of their demos, except for 50 plus, was down from that 4-week average. So we are seeing this week kind of an episode that, I mean, it did fine. It was 21st on cable, but I don't think getting the buzz on Tuesday as we are progressing week by week, even though I thought Tuesday was a very entertaining show. I love that Swerve Scott, Leon Ruff match that they had. That was a fantastic, fantastic opener.
Great opener. I really enjoyed the main event. All throughout the show, I thought it was a very consistent show, and with storylines that I think are shaping up really well. So I'm really enjoying NXT on Tuesdays. I'm enjoying it a lot more. And I don't know if that's just the quality of the show or just the fact that we don't have to kind of play this comparison game every single week.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier watching it on its own night. It was just a lot between doing Dynamite, then our show, which would eat up 90 minutes, and then doing that as well. It was those were very lengthy Wednesday nights, so it definitely spreads it out a lot more. But for numbers for Raw, all the A&E programming, we have reports up on the site at postwrestling.com that you can always go and check out. But now it's time for the Blood and Guts edition of Dynamite. I am very optimistic on this show doing a very strong number. I sense, not even the day of, I would say on Tuesday, by that point, I sensed a lot of buzz for this show. AEW did a ton of media appearances of the key people, and it just seemed like this match, it was teased last year. It's been built up, I think, really effectively this year. And you had that Road 2 on Monday. It just seemed a lot of the pieces came into place. And the other factor that I think is going to enhance this number is if ever there was an episode that is going to grow that 50 plus audience, that is going to have the biggest impact on your overall viewership, this is the show you're tuning into with the War Games nostalgia of how is AEW going to do War Games. So I think we're going to get a pretty good number, unless I'm really underestimating the impact Cinco de Mayo could have. That's really the only factor I could see, because this feels to me like this was a really well promoted match.
Well, I mean, again, I don't really know much about Cinco de Mayo, but like, are people really going out to celebrate that this year? Or
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess it depends where you are, but I mean, it feels very much like a stay-at-home type of thing, and I am very optimistic about this number as well. I agree with you. Felt like the hype was really good going in. I mean, really, Blood and Guts is something that has been a year in the making, so that in and of itself feels like a big deal. Feels like it is. It might be the biggest match that they've ever promoted on Dynamite. So
it felt like it. Like you've had your. You did your Omega Moxley, like you've had some big matches, but this one did feel at, that tippy top level of television matches that they had presented.
Yeah.
So Don Callis and Michael Nakazawa are out at the beginning, and Don Callis goes over all the Japanese legends that he names alongside Kenny Omega, like Inoki, Baba, Ibushi, Okada, and Michael Nakazawa, the Japanese legends.
Yeah, still throwing those Ibushi references out there.
By design, I'm sure.
By design. Yeah, we should also note that so this first hour was all taped.
That's right. So the people that were there in attendance got to watch these on the big screen, it sounded like, and then they got the Blood and Guts match live.
Yeah, and I believe their audio was apparently piped in to this tape show.
This sounded like this first hour sounded red hot, but it certainly kept up for the live portion in the second hour as well. Mm-hmm. This was a great crowd. So it's Callis announcing that Omega could not attend tonight. The announcers call him out as lying. So Nakazawa, he says, will wrestle this one alone against Kingston and Moxley. But it's all a ploy because when Moxley and Kingston come out, Omega jumps them with the belt and the match begins. Nakazawa low blows Kingston behind referee Paul Turner's back and chokes him with his lanyard. Paul Turner sees this. He's okay with the lanyard. Kingston is eating these chops from Omega. Moxley comes in. He stomps down Nakazawa and then hits a pile driver. Omega goes to make the save, but then bails to the floor as it's 2-on-1 against Nakazawa, and Omega just bails to the back. They hit Nakazawa with a double team lariat into a Kingston half-and-half suplex, and Moxley pins Nakazawa in 8 minutes. And that is how we kicked off the show. And then we got the run-ins. But the match itself here, it was Omega bailing on Nakazawa. And as we'd learn later in the show, as much as they're hinting at something with Moxley and Kingston designed with Omega, it looks like they are going a different direction for Double or Nothing.
Yeah. And I think Kingston and Moxley are seem more headed into the tag team direction.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, which is probably what you're going to get. I also wonder, though, I think Mox and, either Kingston or Omega or Mox and Omega again, that's probably something you continue after the fact. But it just seems more like it's a Mox Kingston versus the Elite type of feud, or at least for the time being. So he goes by MT Nakazawa, and I believe that's supposed to be a parody of QT Marshall. Like as just sort of like the hanger on. And I find him really amusing as sort of like the, ring young boy Gopher to Kenny, the Gopher to Kenny. But man, they have not done really nearly enough to kind of establish like why he's called MT now and really what the relationship is. But in either case, I mean, it was fun, kind of cowardly, Kenny stuff, got some star power on the show, and just continued teasing the tag programs you might get out of Mox and Kingston.
Yeah, the Young Bucks came out, Matt was dressed in like this Hawaiian outfit that was described as someone's shower curtain. And they distract as the Good Brothers jump Moxley and Kingston, lay them out with the Magic Killer, and then Matt super kicks Kingston with his bare foot, and then Nick delivers another super kick. Omega returns, Cutler films them as he hits a one-winged angel onto Eddie Kingston and pins him as Nick covers 3.
I definitely think like we are going to get Omega Kingston at some point.
Certainly. We're certainly going to.
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a longer build. But, for Double or Nothing, Kingston and Moxley versus the Bucks.
I mean, that's what I took from this. Unless they're going to do some kind of swerve, that's what it seems like, is going with the Bucks against Moxley and Kingston. Mm-hmm. Which you'd probably have to set up next week, I would think.
And just seeing the way AEW are throwing out these kind of like title matches for their TV shows. I mean, it's if you have something big for Double or Nothing, that's great, but they have to think about main eventing for all of those several Dynamites as well, and that's maybe where you do Kingston versus Mox, or sorry, Kingston Omega.
They did announce, this is our first announcement for Double or Nothing. It will be Hikaru Shida and Britt Baker for the Women's Championship. QT Marshall versus Cody Rhodes. Cody immediately attacks him, and the crowd is all chanting for Cody. Bryce takes Cody's weightlifting belt away, but instead QT has his own and starts whipping Cody. And Cody, right in front of the referee, just rakes the eyes of QT and then scratches the back. Going back to like Hulk Hogan, 1988 here.
Back scratching. Have you ever had your back scratched violently, John?
I won't lie. I wouldn't want that. That would suck. Like if someone hasn't like cut their nails, it's number one, painful. Number two, really gross too.
It's yeah, probably.
QT then pie faces Arn on the floor, and Arn comes back, nailing QT and drives his ear into the post, leading to Arn getting ejected. And then in our one like tip off of this being taped was the sunset flip spot where QT's ass was censored.
Yeah, they're not that quick with the censoring.
No, they're not that quick.
Well, I mean, on a tape show, this is your opportunity to show some ass.
I want to know what the standards and practices are. We know that shit is not. That's like I think we had Tony say shit on tonight's broadcast. But an ass that's too far.
They probably could have, if it was by accident, would they have been able to show it? Maybe not on cable, but yeah, it's weird. Like I think our North American standards for, censorship are totally strange.
So Cody goes for a Cody cutter, but it's stopped and QT hits his own crossroads. Cody kicks out. The diamond cutter gets countered. QT then needs 2 tries here before he lifts up Cody for the buckle bomb. And then we get the tombstone counters, a SummerSlam 94 special. And then Cody ends it with his tombstone. Crossroads, QT kicks out. Cody is shocked. He lifts up QT, who gives him the middle finger. And then, dude, I watched this like the Zapruder film. He grabs the leg of QT and then goes for the figure 4. Somewhere between this middle finger, the takedown, and the figure 4, Cody busts open his eye, and he was just bleeding from this. I'm thinking he clipped it on QT's like knee brace or something, but I watched this. It's like, I don't know how this happened, because during the middle finger spot, he's fine. And then he applies the figure 4, and dude, Niagara Falls is coming out of the eye.
Yeah, I thought I'd missed something, and like I'm not able to rewind on watching on TSN, so I
watched this multiple times.
I'm glad you did, because maybe it was the middle finger, or the bare ass. It was just too much for him.
It was all of that out. Was like literally like I think he had got to have, it had to have been on the takedown where it was just something caught him, but it was like, man, he got a lot of blood here. And this would not be the show where you would ever want to have excess blood, but this just looked to be an accident. And anyway, you got quite the visual on Cody here at the end. And then I love this. I'm really starting to enjoy this guy. Anthony Ogogo into the ring, body shot. I thought this was so perfect. And then he puts the Union Jack over Cody. I hope this is the match for Double or Nothing. They're going to announce Cody's match next week. This is the only thing that makes sense. And please give me the Adonis Creed in the tire, preparing for those body shots. Give me that montage. Going out to the desert to train.
I'll take that. Can we get some Bill Conti in there? In either Cody on the road too, maybe?
Maybe some Ty Conti, but I don't know about Bill.
Very good. Yeah. I enjoyed the match, and it had a very kind of like nice old school feel to it.
Dude, QT worked really hard in this match. Like his stuff looked really good. I mean, Cody is Cody, but I thought QT looked really good in this match.
Yeah, the road to was really great with him as well. He like did a whole thing like where he was in a psychiatrist's office, and I thought had some great motivations for this match. So this really felt like it was a blow off for these two, which might feel a bit early because of, like we didn't really even get to pay-per-view with these two. But I think it's becoming a lot more apparent that, QT Marshall's kind of like breaking out from the Nightmare family is really more so for people like Anthony Ogogo to really kind of treat them as sort of the main acts, with QT ultimately kind of fading in a bit more into a managerial role. And that seems like what we're going to get here. The main event is going to be Ogogo versus Cody.
Alex Marvez is with Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page up in the the upper level of Daly's place. And Scorpio Sky says, "Riddle me this, who's afraid of the big black bat?" And they compare Sting to a mosquito who is sucking the blood out of this company. And what do you do with mosquitoes? You kill them. Listen, Steve, showtime is over. I'm the franchise, bitch. And with that, Ethan Page goes over his history with Darby Allin, but says no one wants to hear about a bunch of matches that they've never seen. God, poor Evolve.
I mean, I kind of do, but he is right. He really is right.
All those Flow Slam subscribers, they know what's up. He says the reason you wear your face paint is to cover the permanent dent that I put in your forehead, and then also took credit for his elbow being all screwed up from that goddamn shovel spot, which was brutal. Check out The Wrestlers, everybody, on Crave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can learn all about the history of Darby Allin and Ethan Page, courtesy of narrator and host Damian Abraham. But then Darby jumps them, and he has this brawl with him. This was a pretty spectacular brawl. He climbed up this ladder and did a coffin drop to Ethan Page on the concrete. And Sky hits him with a garbage can, and then my words were, "Oh, fuck," because I saw stairs. And you knew where this was going. They forced Darby's face onto the studded shoes of Scorpio Sky, which just seemed really unpleasant, but also not enough time that the fan at home could realize how uncomfortable and painful this must have been. But it didn't matter, because then they launched this guy down the concrete steps. Oh my God.
He's crazy. He's nuts. And this segment I thought was great. I didn't think it was all great. Let me start off with the negative. I thought Sky's promo was pretty weak. Starting off with like the Batman
Big
Forever
Black
line.
Bat.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, it Sting's Black Bat, but it's just like, I thought it was kind of corny. And then the use of the word bitch. I think it's fine if you're starting out, if you're somebody brand new, to rely on that sort of crutch. But come on, Sky could do better than that.
It's a main event word, dude.
Is it really a main event word? Anyway, I thought he was kind of weak, but then we get to Ethan Page, who I thought just killed it. Bringing up the history between the two, even if we don't know what the matches look like, simply knowing that there's this background between the two, and what he said about the face paint for Darby Allin, him using it to hide his scars, I thought was great. And then you get into the physicality, and this all of a sudden went from like just a regular interview to like an action movie, where it's not just like guys whipping each other into like crates and shit like that. This had like real stunts. All of a sudden it's like Darby Allin jumping off of the scaffold. Then here comes Scorpio Sky with like a big trash bin, like whipping it full force. And of course you end it with the fall down the steps. It was very satisfying and quite spectacular.
Yeah, this was a pretty violent, spectacular segment here. And it would seem like we are getting a tag match with this. The only question mark is, what is Lance Archer's role in all of this, if any?
Will probably be like, because is Sting gonna wrestle, or
I think Sting's got to wrestle at the pay-per-view. It seems like that's what he's here for.
If it's going to be a straight up match, it would be a far better match with Archer. But yeah, you probably want to promote Sting in some capacity.
Britt Baker took on Julia Hart, who's a 19-year-old wrestler out of the factory. And Baker, this was pretty short. It wasn't really enough time to really get any kind of sense of Julia Hart. She has done Dark in the past, though. She gets the glove, air raid crash, pulls up Julia from the canvas, and then applies the lockjaw and wins in 90 seconds.
Yeah, really not the purpose of this was not to profile Julia Hart in any way. She was just here to kind of play a body to heat Britt Baker up for that title match next week. And I thought this was a perfectly strong way to heat a contender up before a championship match. They accomplished,
not next week.
Oh, I'm sorry, pay-per-view. Yeah, how many weeks is that away? How much time?
Under 4.
Under 4. Okay, well, still a bit of time, actually. 1, 2, 3. Wow. It's still actually quite a bit of time. Well, either way, I feel like they accomplished far more in just doing a squash match like this than, say, a match between Britt Baker and another quote-unquote star that ends in, like, you know, a bullshit DQ. Like, it doesn't help anybody, you know? So I even if it's like a 2 5-minute squash, I'm more than happy to see these. I think they work.
Then we had the return of Technique by Taz on Christian Cage, and I really enjoyed this. This was a breakdown of Christian Cage with Taz burying this guy, the lack of impact on his frog splash. 2 out of his 3 kill switch attempts failed because of poor footwork, and then he shows Hobbs just overpowering Christian. The honeymoon is over, and this guy has a long way to go before he catches up to Brian Cage and Team Taz. And it looks like we are getting Cage squared. That would be my guess for Double or Nothing.
Cage squared, yeah. Yeah, cool.
Varsity Blondes.
I believe it's, isn't it, what's his name? Hook. Isn't Hook's birthday or something today?
It might have been. Yeah, I think I saw that. Happy birthday, Hook.
Happy birthday.
The Varsity Blondes are out, and Bryan is wearing his father's trunks. And then Max Caster comes out for his rap. He calls the Varsity Blondes a temporary thing. In 10 years, you'll be on dark side of the ring. Jungle Boy, I'll slap you like you're John Stossel. Luchasaurus, I'll turn you into a fossil. That was pretty good.
It's great. Excellent.
And he's going to take the titles off those young cucks.
Do you like that one?
He didn't rhyme it, did he? It was just like a line.
Maybe, I don't know. I forget.
All right. Nonetheless,
You know,
this was good. I like Stossel Fossil was his high point.
Tony Khan hyped this up, and I really thought it delivered. I think these verses have been getting more and more, obscene, disgusting, and I think it's great.
Oh, so what's he? If he gets booked on the pay-per-view, does he have free reign?
I would hope so.
So it's the four team eliminator with Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, the Varsity Blondes, the Acclaimed, and Daniels and Kazarian. They had a commercial in the midst of this, and I thought this one they just had to deal with. Number one, I don't think we needed 4 teams in this. It just seemed like this one was really condensed, and you had multiple stories going on. You had, Daniels and Kazarian should have been the focus, and to me, they were kind of, they were there for the ending sequence, but I just thought there was a lot going on, and a commercial in the middle of it just threw a grenade into all of these stories going on. Luchasaurus got the shine where he chokeslammed Kazarian to the floor. Pillman did a springboard clothesline that looked great, and Jim Ross got on the line that Pillman was flying, or Bryan was flying, I guess was the line. Jungle Boy then gets stopped on top by Daniels. There's a flatliner to the floor. Kazarian and Pillman trade strikes, and then Pillman is put in the tombstone position, and they hit the best Meltzer ever for the victory. So next week, it will be Daniels and Kazarian going for the tag titles against the Young Bucks with their career as a tag team on the line. So I hope they do a road to for this to push this one, because it requires it. I think that this is the peak of this story, and unfortunately, it's largely played out on Dark. We got the opening promo, we got last week, and we got this. That's pretty much been your Dynamite representation of this story, and now we're going to the peak next week.
That opening promo was like half a year ago. How many people even remember it at this point? I mean, we all know the story. But it is disappointing considering, anytime you've done sort of like this sort of retirement story with Daniels, like,
you need a big promo from Daniels going into this match.
For me, like, the whole draw is like seeing this run, getting invested, like the Flair run, before he retired. Like, every match should have meant something because it could have been the last time these two would have teamed together. Really no drama or emotion, at least from my end, attached to SCU. That might change, like, for the match with the Bucks, but I think nobody really expects them to be any sort of real challenger or contender for the championships. And instead, I'm looking at next week just as more of a jumping off point for them to carry on some, whatever storyline they have with Daniels and Kaz afterwards.
Yeah, I would not go for the feel-good moment of just put the belts on them.
Oh, God, no.
I would not do that at all. The Bucks I think they're really gelling as these heels.
It wouldn't feel that good, John, because I don't think many people care.
Well, that's where you're at. I think like that would be your only argument to prolong this with Daniels and Kazarian. I think next week has to be it. That's it. So I wish this had a buffer week to at least do that one big promo from Daniels about going into their last match together and why this is so important. You can do that on your social platforms or whatever, but I would have liked to have had one extra week. Then they did a feature for the Yuji Nagata Jon Moxley match last week. A great promo from Moxley asking, when will Nagata not be able to get back up again? Well, it's coming pretty soon. I was sold. I think this match is going to be fantastic next week. I'm so looking forward to this.
I was sold from the moment they announced it, and then seeing this video just got me so much more hyped. It was cool to see a bit of like New Japan video production on an AEW TV show.
Yeah, tons of New Japan footage here. Yeah.
Can you tell me something? I don't know if this was taken from Yuji Nagata's Titantron or something, but does it always say, sounds good, let's do it? Like in big blue font. Did you catch that?
I didn't, but I think that is from the Tron.
Like, is that a catchphrase or something? Sounds good. Like what?
What do you want from the man?
Sounds good. I love it. Great promo from Moxley here.
Yeah,
hey,
Moxley.
Do you think he gets called the Death Rider? It comes up to the Death Rider music?
No, I think he'll be... it's a good question. Like, I'm very curious of like how... I think he will just be AEW Jon Moxley, and they're going to stick to all the AEW identification. But, I mean, is this... I joked about it last week, but seriously, is this like New Japan rules when it comes to the count out on the floor? Is like what? Like it's a United States. This is a New Japan title match.
It's a very good question, but at the same time, it's like I think it's more of an American League, National League thing. Like if you're playing a game in the National League stadium, you don't have a designated hitter.
All right. Next up, we had where did we go to here? Tony Schiavone with Kenny Omega, and he comes out. Nakazawa's carrying the Impact, TNA, and AAA titles. Omega carries the main AEW title. And Omega's asking, who's ready for blood and guts? Everyone's cheering. Well, that makes one of us. Tony announces that next week, it will be an eliminator bout between Pac and Orange Cassidy in a rematch from Revolution last year. The winner gets Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing. Omega basically cut Pac's own promo for him, outlining all the times Pac has won and their history, and then goes on to say, why don't we just announce Pac as the number one contender? But then Orange Cassidy walks out, and Omega doesn't take him seriously at all. Omega gets what Orange Cassidy means for the company. I see people with their hands in their pockets, dressing up like you for Halloween, or for their sock hops, and people want to be like you because they can. They can't be like me. You're not championship material. The only thing championship material about you is what you ripped off from me, as he takes off his Ray-Bans and he places them on Nakazawa and says they look better on Nakazawa and he's more of a champion than you. And he ends it by saying that we'll see Orange Cassidy in 10 years once you're a fully grown adult, and I'll see you whenever. See you in the funnies.
See you in the funnies.
Yes.
Like the funny pages.
Yeah.
Huh. Cool. I like Kenny's promo, and I think Kenny took a lot of time here because he was going up against Orange Cassidy, who doesn't say anything. So it relied on Kenny, doing all the talking. And I think your enjoyment of this will be dependent on how much you enjoy Kenny Omega doing sort of his over the top heel shtick. I enjoyed it. I thought he had some good lines here. I really like the line about people wanting to dress up like Orange Cassidy because they're so painfully average. They see themselves in this very average man, whereas he is anything but average. And taking the glasses, I suppose, is just they need something, to heat this up in a small amount of time. But I think Orange Cassidy it really is leading towards Orange Cassidy, and I think it's the harder match for a pay-per-view because it's going to be an exciting match. Orange Cassidy is a very special type of draw that just announcing the match on paper will get a lot of people interested. And yeah, it should, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting direction because I would say that, for WWE, for instance, I mean, they can really get away with any kind of main event title match. Like, you can really slot in anyone. AEW, it's much more attraction driven, as we saw with Moxley and Omega. Like, that was the key drawing match on that show that made a difference for their number. And they're going with the idea. I'm with you. I think that they probably go with Cassidy here, but regardless, this is not one of their big baby faces that they're going with. This is not Moxley. This is not even Kingston that they're going. That it tells me they must have something major to kind of support this, because this does not feel like the match that would close the show, even though Omega Cassidy will be, I think, a spectacular match.
I think so too. I think it's probably not going to be, a main event or anything like that, but a really kind of nice special attraction. And we'll assume that they'll have a lot of time.
So then Miro is out for the next interview segment. They note that Kip Sabian is going under the knife. Miro says no one will distract his destiny. The problem is here to collect, and he has a signed contract for next week's episode, a TNT Championship match with Darby Allin. And there is no avoiding this, regardless of whether he's healthy or not. They explain that if Darby cannot defend the title next week, he forfeits the title. These AEW matchmakers, what assholes. Guys defended the title like 4 times.
He fell downstairs. Come on.
Row? Man. Yeah. But then the line from Miro, next week we'll find out what happens when the man who doesn't mind dying meets the man who doesn't mind killing him.
Great line. Really
I think
strong.
I think Miro might be winning this next week.
You think so, eh?
I mean, they've really set the table for Darby. Like, Darby needs to be crippled next week as he goes into this match.
To have Darby somehow beat Miro, that might actually be a bit tougher to see, because I think Miro has been so strong and so hot. But at the same time, Darby's been incredibly hot. Do you want to end this run right away, or at this moment? Like, have you accomplished all you have with Darby Allin's TNT title run?
It's an interesting question. If you think that Darby is at a level where does the title bring him, losing the title bring him down a peg, or is he at a level now that he can sustain this loss, but he's already a made guy in AEW?
And is Miro the type of champion you would expect to have in a TNT title defense week to week on the show?
I'll say this, that I don't, unless they don't try to rely too much on screwy finishes, I would not be beating Miro now after you're finally giving him this serious run. And the angle, it kind of does telegraph things for a change next week for Darby.
Yeah.
So next week, we've got 3 title matches altogether. So it's Darby Allin and Miro, Jon Moxley versus Yuji Nagata for the IWGP US title, the Young Bucks against SCU for the tag titles, Orange Cassidy against Pac, and then an interview with Jade Cargill and Cody Rhodes making his announcement for Double or Nothing. This is a stacked episode next week. This looks incredible.
Very much so. I mean,
Cassidy and Pac, that was amazing last year.
I think we're so used to maybe, big editions of these kind of pay-per-view level TV shows occurring, and then maybe having a come down episode right afterwards with things that, might still be important, but not as much. Next week feels very, very kind of like a small notch away from this week. It feels like a really big show.
This one had the bigger promotion, the bigger buzz, but the depth on next week's show to me is greater. I mean, this is really surrounding like one big match this week, but this is a tremendous lineup.
I mean, do you think it's a conscious effort by AEW to try to use this period of unopposed weeks to really establish that above 1 million consistent level rating?
I think the million it's a nice number to look at. I think they're far more concerned with how high they finish with the demo figure every week. And an amazing stat that Dave Meltzer had that he just noted the other day was last week when the number was down going against Joe Biden's speech to Congress. It was something like their final viewership, that number that we got last week was 59% of their total viewers was that number. So they did an unbelievable amount of DVR viewership last week.
Wow. Okay.
So
cool.
That's interesting. Justin Roberts proclaims it is time for blood and guts. And this was essentially the last 45 minutes of the episode. And this crowd, it was deafening. It was unbelievable to hear this noise as the teams came out. It was at a fever pitch. You had the Pinnacle coming out, and they were all decked out in white, which was just screaming bloodbath to come. And then the Inner Circle come out, and this place is just belting out Judas. They're all dressed as prison inmates, representing,
with their own hometowns, prisons listed on the back.
That, I guarantee, was a Jericho idea. It was very much like the football uniforms last year for Stadium Stampede. I thought a really cool look. Ortiz and Santana went to the Dead Presidents look.
Mm-hmm.
Santana looking like the greatest character on television. Just awesome. I just thought, man, the atmosphere was through the roof. It was amazing.
Definitely. What did you think about the cage itself? Slightly updated, different, cage here. We
had like the two rings, the roof.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think?
Reinforced with scaffolding, so a very sturdy type of roof. Bit of extra space on the aprons at the ends for the wrestlers and cameramen to work. Entrances on either side. I think it looks great. Like it looks faithful to the original concept, but like updated to a modern standard. So yeah.
How did you think they got around like shooting it? Like it looked like to me.
Yeah, there were. I think for the most part it was fine. I did find it odd that like they didn't have throughout the rest of the show that they didn't have hard cameras on either side of the ring. So like it was sort of an awkward kind of like slanted angle for most of the evening. But for this match, it made sense. There are certainly criticisms about like some close-ups and maybe the production of certain spots, in particular the closing spot that maybe could have been better in hindsight. But for the most part, for a first go, I would expect that they're probably quite happy.
So Sammy Guevara started with Dax Harwood, and they said it was going to be a 5-minute period. The first one ended up being 4 minutes, and there was huge heat. Everyone's chanting for Sammy, and Dax gets busted open in these opening minutes, and holy Christ, this was a gusher that this guy had for pretty much 40 minutes. Like immediately they got to this, and Sammy hit this double springboard cutter right at the end. I know he had the one slip, but my God, Sammy Guevara was phenomenal in this match. Like, I know the match was built around MJF for the end, but to me, the star of this match in many ways was Sammy Guevara, who did some breathtaking spots and I thought just shined. And this is the guy who hasn't had a match since February.
I totally agree with you. I thought he really kind of like stole the spotlight, and despite the one slip up, I actually
the slip worked. Like Shivani was right on top of it, saying he's got the effects of the chair shot. They were right on top of it. That was one of you and I always bring up that point that those can work. You can easily just turn that into the story. You do not have to, look at that as like some negative in all of this. And I didn't take it in this.
In this match, I think we look towards a few people getting, their big kind of establishing moments. And I would say Sammy, for being away for so long, was one of those names. I think Santana, coming off of like the fantastic promo work he's done from the last few weeks, was somebody as well. And also Sean Spears. And I thought all three like came in with like pretty big presence.
Yeah, so Spears is in third. He brought the chair. He was followed by Ortiz. The entrances were kind of like all over the place at different parts. It was like in the vicinity of 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Then we had all the chair spots here. Guevara and Spears meet on the top rope, and there's a chair thrown to Spears' back that prompts him to jump onto the rope with Guevara, who hits one-man Spanish fly, and that's when Guevara goes for the double springboard and slips, and Shivani just instantly covers for it, citing the chair shots from Spears.
That double jump Spanish fly from Spears and
unbelievable.
Guevara, to me, was the spot of the match. Like, the fact that they were able to hit that so flawlessly based off of like everything. It was so like intricate and so many things could have gone wrong with the the throwing of the chair into the jump into the Spanish Fly. The fact that they executed that so perfectly, I forgive any sort of like screw up that they might have had after this. It was spectacular.
Cash Wheeler is in 5th, followed by Santana, and they finally go to a break about 10 minutes into the match, and during the picture-in-picture, that's when Wardlow enters. How did you think they balanced? Because I think it was 3 commercial breaks built into the match.
I don't really know if like they are communicating even all that much with the participants as they're going to these commercial breaks, because it really felt like they were just going through with like major beats in the match throughout these commercials. And I think if they could have planned this a little bit better, I probably would have had, it's impossible though. If you're going to stick to like the 2-minute rule, then you're going to have somebody enter, mid commercial break. And the question is whether or not it should have been Wardlow or, he should have like taken a break with somebody else. But either way, maybe, they couldn't have really worked around it. And I think it's actually more realistic for them to just continue as if like, they weren't going to commercial.
I'll say after it was either the second or the third break. And I thought it was like, man, like this thing's just building and building. And then it's like you have this like come down during the break. But I've got to say, the heat from this crowd, it lifted you back up pretty quick when they came back. I thought they had like that in their back pocket, that in a normal Daily's Place setting that we've been watching, or if it had been empty, I think that would have really harmed the momentum of the match. But like this crowd was super hot, and they were a big assist throughout this match.
I'm really curious about the philosophy of them doing picture-in-picture, and we see that they continue to do picture-in-picture, despite both NXT and AEW still continue to do picture-in-picture despite not having, competition. But like with AEW, for when they started doing it, they would do a lot of like big moments in the commercial breaks. Then they kind of stopped, and they would just kind of like have, your typical, heel gets the advantage so the commercial break and you come back, you didn't really miss anything. In this particular match, you would have missed a whole lot if you really weren't paying attention to the commercials. They started taking apart the ring here.
Yeah, you come back and the whole ring's been cut up. Yeah. So they come back and Hager is here, and he's got the ankle lock on Spears, who taps, but they explain that it cannot end till all members are in the ring. So we have the big stare down between Hager and Wardlow as they meet. MJF is in 9th, and MJF is just posing to all these boos. He warns Jericho he's a dead man when he enters. And then we just cut to Cash Wheeler, who is busted wide open, and I don't know what happened to him.
Something, grazed the cage, and any excuse... Any excuse to, cut yourself in this match, I think you were going to see.
Jericho is the last entrant, and now it is submit or surrender. And we have the 2 sides square off from each side, and they attack. Jericho's got the bat. Spears' head is put through a lighting truss, and that's when we go to another picture-in-picture. We come back. The canvas is torn up, revealing the wood underneath. Spike piledriver to FTR. The top rope is taken down. Then Spears is put in a tree of woe. The chair is placed in front of him, and Sammy hits a coast-to-coast drop kick. MJF is held while bleeding, and he gets hit with a fork by Santana. And then Sammy Guevara blasts Wardlow with a chair shot to the head.
Like, it wasn't even protected, right? It was just
dude, this looked clean. Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Did not look good. Final break, and we come back. MJF has now climbed on top of the roof. They explain that he got the key from Bryce Remsburg. Jericho follows him.
This was also during the commercial.
Yeah, this was during the commercial.
It was Tully, I guess, knocking Bryce Remsburg to the ground and then opening the cage door. So if you weren't squinting to watch the commercial, you would have missed.
Which I don't think you can expect your audience to be paying that close attention to. But,
yeah.
I mean, at least the announcers did update you on why they have left the cage. Like that would have been a big hole not to have filled. MJF is begging off, the walls is applied, and then a low blow is hit by MJF, and he applies the salt of the earth. Jericho will not submit. MJF attacks the arm, he bites it, he reapplies the salt of the earth, and then again lets go, and he reveals he's got the Dynamite diamond ring, punching Jericho in the forehead, causing him to bleed. And then MJF eyes the floor, and Shivani calls him this piece of shit. What's he going to do? And he teases throwing him off the cage unless the Inner Circle surrenders. And he's got this maniacal look with the blood coming down his face, and the Inner Circle surrenders. And then it just seemed like there was some kind of, like, the timing just seemed to be off, and it was like they wanted to, I don't know if they wanted to get the perfect shot, if this was too early, because there was definitely a lot of time left in the show. They had like 4 or 5 minutes left, and it just felt like instead of just going to the big spot for the dramatic fall, it was like we set everything in place, and you knew what was happening. You saw the floor where it was set up with the gimmick landing, and then you did the big plunge, which, I mean, in highlight form will look great, but I think in the moment it was just, I just think the timing was a little off.
Yeah. And you know, it would otherwise be something relatively small, but because this was like the culminating scene in the entire match and story, I think it deserves maybe a bit more focusing and a bit more criticism. You know, this was also like sort of one of the unfortunate parts where the camera was really zoomed in right on Jericho as he was communicating to Max, you know, while he was supposed to have been knocked out with that diamond ring. So, that, you know, that was another kind of unfortunate part. I don't really know what happened here. Maybe we'll hear like Jericho kind of, you know, explain it. But it didn't. It either went exactly to plan and somehow was not captured the way maybe they had it in their heads, or it was poorly executed because they were waiting on something. But, you know, there were a few issues in that. I think everybody expected the fall. You could see the crash pad, and that certainly took a level of drama away from it. And by the time they did it, it didn't feel like it was shocking, nor really, I think, all that big of a spot. But when you really think about it, it really is. I mean, especially considering that this is 50-year-old Chris Jericho taking a bump like this. And
the thing was, Wai, they had the moment. Like, as soon as the Inner Circle surrenders, if he had just all of a sudden, boom, low blow shoves him out of nowhere, you've got that moment. Like, they had it, and it was just, they just sat on it a little too long before the viewer could put all the pieces together and saw what to expect. I wasn't too, like, I understand, like, the timing, it was off. To me, though, like, this to me was night and day compared to the exploding death match.
Completely. And the other thing is, if it's a matter of safety that they had to make sure that everything was in place for, then I absolutely, completely understand. Safety comes first, number one. You know, I don't give a shit about any sort of drama. Like, if you're talking about a man taking, a 50-year-old man taking that sort of bump, like, clean it up in editing. Who gives a shit, right? As long as it was safe. And it looked like it was perfectly safe. And I'm really happy about that. Wrestling should be like this. You shouldn't be risking life, like, you know, to crazy extents. The fact that there was a crash pad is not such a bad thing at all.
I wish they had it on the steps for Darby earlier.
Sure. It's maybe more so like, you know, how well were they able to hide it? I can't really say. It was unfortunately pretty obvious, like this kind of giant box out of nowhere. But, you know, for a first War Games match, everything like leading up to the stunt I thought was tremendous. I thought it built up really well. The intensity was really strong.
The heat was great from the crowd. Like this,
man.
Like,
yeah.
You know, the next, I said that the night after the pay-per-view, or the night of the pay-per-view with the exploding barbed wire death match, like, you know, I'm not saying you can never do another one of those again, but it's going to take a lot to build up to do that kind of match again after the feeling people had of the last one. The next time you announce Blood and Guts, it's going to be treated like a big deal. It will be like when WWE introduced Hell in a Cell. I think they've introduced a new gimmick match that it was enough of a detour from War Games that AEW had its own unique flavor to it. It was violent as promised. The heat was through the roof. That next time you do this, it's going to feel like they got the concept over to me in this first AEW iteration.
And I think, you know, going into this match, there was maybe a lot of concern about why this match was happening right now at the start of this feud, when, you know, you would expect it to take place at the end. So with Jericho being out, I mean, this is sort of like the beginning of Act 2, right? You know, how does the Inner Circle cope with not having their leader? How can they kind of manage to, you know, come back without them to face the Pinnacle? We might see, you know, a period now where the Pinnacle are just the most dominant group in AEW. And, you know, the story is about the comeback of the Inner Circle from this point. I think it all really works well. And in fact, I think this War Games match, this Blood and Guts match, might have worked out better having these two very kind of like heel leaning stables together rather than, initially planned with the Inner Circle and the Elite, because I think having two more heelish stables kind of promotes a greater level of sadism and violence, which you got to see in this match. It made sense why, Santana was out there using the fork, even though he is technically the babyface team. You wouldn't have really had that with the Elite. So I think the violence of the match, benefited from that.
Yeah, I think Jericho needs to disappear for a while because the story kind of requires it. Like, I think his absence should be like the Inner Circle is broken now. The leader's gone.
Yeah. That's it. So they're like more of a you.
Man, the inner you. They have to find the inner
the inner you.
Man, sounds like an Alan Watts speech. So there you go. That was Blood and Guts. I thought overall this was a pretty entertaining show, and I think overall the concept delivered, and this was a super heated match, and I think an example of you build something up, you do great promos, there can be a great payoff at the end of it. And I felt like that's what you got.
Great match, and I think great promo leading up to it. So great job. I was very entertained.
At this point, let's see what the forum had to say about this with the rating, and then we will open up the phone lines if you would like to discuss. We have got, out of a 10, tonight's show gets a 6.94. A little lower.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Lower on AEW standards.
Wow. Well, I'm very curious to hear what people have to say about it. And let's start off here with Kevin. Kevin, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello. Hey, John.
Hello.
First of all, woke up today, Cinco de Mayo here in the U.S. I guess everywhere, but probably more celebrated in the U.S. than in Mexico, ironically. But anyway, Blood and Guts tonight. But in my mailbox today, I get a postcard from Canada from John and Wayne. It's signed by both of you guys. So thank you very much for that. Not all patrons. This is the double tier, correct?
That is correct. Double ice cap and espresso. Yeah. Okay. I've been sending those out, and thank you for letting me know that you received yours. Awesome.
Yeah. What a cool perk. It was very nice. Never got a postcard in my life until now. Anyway, talking about the show tonight. I was kind of frustrated watching that main event just because of all the commercials and how obvious it was that Jericho was talking to Aubrey. I mean, obviously I know they're timing everything, but it just, I don't know. As soon as Jericho got into the match, things kind of felt flat for me. He got in kind of slowly. I saw him chit-chatting with Aubrey a lot. It just kind of took me out of things, and the commercials added to that. But overall, I liked the match. There's so many amazing things in there. It was very entertaining. I like that the Pinnacle won because the feud can continue. I like that Jericho is going to go away for a while. I just agree with what John said about the finish. If MJF pushed Jericho off right away, I think that would have been so much better. Because I was kind of thinking, how come no one in the Inner Circle is climbing the cage or trying to help Jericho? It just seemed like they were all standing around saying no. I want to leave you guys with a question, and John, no cop outs on this one. I want you to answer too. What's your guys' prediction for the rating tomorrow? Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think we already gave ours the other day. I mean, I said 1-2 to 1-3, but I'm on the higher end of that. I'm still in that range, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna adjust. I'm gonna say their highest has been what, 1.3?
They did over 1.4 for the debut.
The debut, and then 3 weeks ago was how much? 1.2. 2? Okay, I'm gonna say this will be higher than that. I'm gonna say 1.3. Let's go up next to Nick. Nick, are you there?
I am. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Happy Wednesday. I also got my post-wrestling postcard in the mail today. What a coincidence. I really appreciate that. I loved tonight. And there's that line in the AEW Dynamite theme song where it talks about turning Wednesdays into Fridays. And tonight definitely felt like a Friday. Some big Friday night violence in our lives tonight. And I think the thing I appreciated the most about tonight was that when you watch I still love the NXT War Games matches that we've been getting for the past few years, but those definitely still feel like, wrestling matches with the War Games element. This felt like a down and dirty fight with wrestling elements in there. And I agree. I totally agree with you guys. I think Sammy Guevara for me was the star of this match. I think he's someone who's had like a pretty tumultuous couple of months. And if you're going to build him up as a babyface, this was the way to do it. Have him be like, sort of the Iron Man of this match. And I think a big element going forward for the Inner Circle could be like seeing Sammy Guevara step up as that, like their new leader of that group and get him over as a big babyface. And I think that's definitely something that they should pursue coming out of this.
Very interesting. That would be quite the elevation. Nick, you mentioned like some comparisons to the NXT War Games. How much of a factor did blood play into the intensity of this one?
I thought it was a welcome addition. Honestly, I didn't feel like it was blood for the sake of blood. I thought, for the fact that when the one that really got to me was the cutaway. You guys mentioned it, the cutaway to Cash, and all of a sudden his face was just totally, he had the crimson mask. And I think there's an element to these matches where sometimes they can feel a little pre-programmed. And I think sometimes the NXT matches feel that way. This felt like there was violence all over the double ring. And sometimes like when it's just that hectic and it feels like that much of a fight, sometimes you miss things. And if the camera can like train in on those moments and be like, oh, wow, like when did this happen? Did I miss that? Maybe I have to rewatch this, maybe. But like, the fact is, like, that this was a fight for all of these guys in it. I was sad that we missed some moments in the picture-in-picture, like the moment when Wardlow came in was picture-in-picture, and he's essentially taking on like all three of the guys. I thought it was like sad that some of those moments got missed. And there was a moment where like I turned my head and I came back from the picture-in-picture, and Jericho and MJF were on the top of the cage. I was like, whoa, how did I get up there? But I think the ultra violence of this really worked just to like juxtapose it from the War Games in NXT that we get every year.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Bryan up next. Bryan, are you there?
I am here. Happy Wednesday, guys. And
Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, glad you opened up this call for all patrons this week. And I also do enjoy the two previously Wednesday night war shows being on separate nights. It's been so much easier. And and this has been a good, easy Dynamite to watch. As violent as it got, I really enjoy these Clash of the Champions style shows that they put on. And even before the Blood and Guts, I really enjoyed all the promos throughout the show from the likes of Ethan Page and Miro and Moxley Nagata and Kenny Omega, and even Max Caster's raps have become a guilty pleasure for me. And and the match itself, I thought delivered quite well. Production stuff aside, I love the ending. MGF using great heel genius work to get the win and continue this feud. And that's pretty much all I got in regards to that. And I imagine the feud between the two factions might be ending with a Jericho MJF singles match.
I think that would be your culmination would be, when Jericho comes back. I mean, that could be the match you go to. But I do think you should have MJF kind of running roughshod for the time being. And like to Wai's point, I think you can do a lot. You could even do like the Inner Circle, like at odds with one another, like Sammy being the one that they kind of centered on was the one to surrender on behalf of the team. Like there's a lot of interesting avenues you can take out of tonight's match and go in all these different directions.
Yeah, definitely. So, thanks for taking my call. Looking forward to your recapping of Dark Side of the Ring this season as that starts tomorrow night.
Thanks, Bryan.
Wow. Thank you, Bryan. Yeah, 2-hour debut tomorrow, man. So Thursdays all of a sudden are going to get a little bit busier with
Did you watch the first half yet?
Not yet. I'm gonna watch everything at once. Yeah. And I guess they got a bit of a free promotion tonight, courtesy of Max Caster.
Yeah, they did.
Boy, did Bryan just brought it up. Like, man, MJF looked amazing with that blood.
Oh, the visual at the end on top of the cage, like that will be a lasting image for MJF.
Soon, like every shot in the start of the Dynamite opening is going to be one of the
people
wrestlers.
Bloody.
Yeah,
Britt Baker, MJF, Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah. Let's go to Hansi up next. Hansi, are you there? Hansi, are you there?
No, he lost his voice.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Hey, no worries.
Yeah, no, listen, I enjoyed like the entire episode. I thought it was a pretty good. I think it delivered for the most part. Like I like the brutality, and I know that because again, the only comparison you have to recent memory are the NXT War Games matches. I still think the second War Games match with like all of the under because the first War Games in NXT was like a triple threat, and that was kind of weird already. But the second one, I thought like the one with all the Undisputed Era members against like the War Raiders and Pete Dunne and Ricochet. That one was probably my favorite one because it had like those feuds there going on, and it had like the brutality. But it was a weird thing because again they had the surrender element to it, and I like what they did with the surrender element. But again, like just I think it would have been perfect if it wasn't shot the way it was shot because now like Shotzi Blackheart and all of them are having fun at the expense of the ending, and it's causing like a lot of turf wars with like NXT and AEW and shit. But like I don't know, I just thought like the ending was kind of a letdown. But I agree with what you're saying, Way, about like this is what wrestling should be in the sense that it should be a safe thing because the more danger it is, like you might like end up getting seriously injured. Like I don't disagree with that. I just thought other than the shot, it would have been a perfect thing for me. But I turned around on like the ending in a sense that I thought it should have ended with like someone passing out or something like that. But I guess they're gonna just add elements to it. And before I go, I just want to say that I don't expect Orange Cassidy to win the title, but I think this is if you're gonna have fans back, I think he's over enough, and I think that if he proved himself against Jericho. But if you have him against Omega and you have him have a good performance against him, even though Omega's probably going to win, obviously, probably who knows. But the thing is, it'll probably make Orange Cassidy come off better, even if he loses, in my personal opinion. And I think even though Pac and Omega will probably be the better match, I think for our first with a lot of fans back, I think Orange Cassidy is the way to go for that because he's like one of the more over stars, and it took me a while to get into him. By the way, I'm going to say that, but I finally kind of went on board with his Jericho feud and all that. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Oh, there's a lot you could do, especially just him doing like one actual line just on that Go Home pay-per-view or Go Home Dynamite, and man, just the idea of 5,000 people at Daly's Place when the Pixies hit. I mean, that kind of just. That would be an unbelievable scene, and maybe the hope is that he draws a pay-per-view number that offsets the rights for the song.
We didn't hear it at all tonight.
No, they should save it. They should if he's gonna do this at the pay-per-view, you shouldn't play that song for the month. Make people crave it for May 30th.
Sorry, Chris Statlander.
But he has to come out to something next week, so they might have to play it next week.
They should just play like the Kim Deal. Anyway.
Or you know what? He comes out to it next week and then Pac jumps him from behind and they cut the music off. So you don't even get the entrance. And that's it. That's how the match starts. Do we have more calls?
No. Oh, we do. Okay. Well, let's go to Joe from H-Town. Joe, are you there?
What's up, guys?
Hi, Joe.
Hey. Is it H-Town as in Houston?
That's correct.
Okay. What's up?
My first Zoom. This feels weird. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I don't know what to do with my hands here. But listen,
I can't even see you.
Oh, do you want to see me? Let's see here.
No. It's okay. It's okay.
What a way to begin 4 nights of fights, man. I mean, that's the way I saw this tonight. Tomorrow we got PFL, then Bellator, then UFC. So pretty good stretch here for fight fans. I just felt like this was a pay-per-view. I mean, that's the way it felt to me going in. I'll be honest, Dynamite's the only show I watch like live, like out of all TV. So so I was really excited and I got home at 7:00 on the dot to watch it. So that was pretty awesome. But I enjoyed the show. What a crazy, blood and guts. Sammy Guevara, man. The first time I saw this guy in Austin, Texas, at a Wrestle Circus show, I knew this guy was going to be the guy.
Right.
And he hasn't even hit his run yet. I mean, this guy is going to be a superstar. Santana, the promo he cut last week about being in prison. I mean, that's just that guy's going to be a big star too. So, I see these factions against factions, but I can't wait till we see these singles guys star. But great show. I don't know what else to say. I mean, great show.
Well, thanks a lot for the call, Joe. Thanks for calling in and on your first Zoom. You did great.
Thanks a lot, man. See you guys.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Like we have a lot of heel factions, I suppose, right now with the Pinnacle, and we have the Elite. Who are the babyface factions you could see if you're gonna like maybe cool off the Inner Circle thing for a while and put the Pinnacle with somebody else? Who would you say, John, that they could pair them with?
I mean, I think it's just going to be a mixture of not necessarily groups, but more so like baby faces that they're going to end up pairing off with. I think you're still going to see the members linked to the Inner Circle members for the time being, and then you can. I'm not necessarily advocating for more groups in AEW. I think we're good.
Brian in the chat says Dark Order. I mean, potential possibility. Let's go to a rare Wednesday appearance here from Stepite. Stepite, are you there?
Hey, boys.
Hi, Stepite.
Hey, Stepite.
Hey there, guys.
Hi.
Happy to join you on a hump day. And I quite liked tonight's presentation. On a scale of 5 bags, definitely an easy 5-bagger for me. Probably 5 garbage bags of the personal possessions of one Mickey James. Or possibly 5 bags of blood, because it was a kind of a gory gusher there at the end. I felt swerved a couple times tonight. Miro having a contract to challenge for the TNT title. Also Cassidy versus Pac, because last I knew, Hangman Page was the number 1 contender. He
lost
by Cage for sure. And it would seem that Cage is headed towards Christian Cage. What do you guys see for Hangman Page for the next pay-per-view? That one seems unclear as of now.
Yeah, it's a good question. He's kind of your odd man out in this current mix. Oh man.
Well, where do you see the inner?
Maybe we could get Cage, and Page.
Maybe. Oh man, they could go wild with that. I wouldn't even mind that.
Yeah. Who's to say you even have to have Page on this pay-per-view? They have enough on the show. But I definitely think it'd probably be something associated with the Dark Order. Yeah, what do you guys see with the with the Pinnacle and MJF? If Jericho's going to be out and not be there for Double or Nothing, can they make a compelling enough? I don't know, for some sort of variation of a match between the Pinnacle and Inner Circle, or do you break off into something like a Dark Order feud with Page and MJF?
I would still imagine there's roughly 3 or 4 weeks until the pay-per-view. I would think, wouldn't they still aim for Jericho versus MJF? And then there could be matches on there or on Dynamite hitting sort of like the guy from the Pinnacle from the guy with the Inner Circle.
Yeah, I suppose 4 weeks would be ample time to heal from a fall from a cage. But I guess in my mind, I feel like he'd be gone for quite a while longer. But yeah, maybe 4 weeks is enough. Thank you for the call, Stepite. Much appreciated on a Wednesday. I'm just sorry. I'm just looking at these AEW rankings here, and man, poor Page. 1 loss sends you all the way down to number 5. Yeah.
I mean, they have your Pac and Cassidy. They're undefeated.
They're undefeated. Yep. Whereas Moxley is 6-1 and Brian Cage is 5-1. And I guess because he holds a win over Page, he ranks above Page. But all right. Let's go to the forum.
All right. We'll get through some of there's a lot here of feedback from people that watch Dynamite tonight. We start off with Johnny. I usually give the QT Cody storyline a chance, but this match highlights mine and my friend's biggest gripe with AEW. They tout not doing DQs, and I'm glad about that, but then they do stuff like QT using the belt in front of the ref after the ref threatened to DQ Cody if he used his. Then Arn punches QT in front of the ref. I get not doing DQs so there are actual finishes, but then don't do this stuff that discredits your ref and insults your audience.
I think that's a fair point. Maybe that just kind of like demands some sort of explanation from the commentators, because certainly people in the audience are going to be asking these types of questions. But in my mind, I feel it's explained because it's like these aren't necessarily infractions that'll cause a finish. They are annoyances. They are, certainly frowned upon. But like whipping somebody with a belt, like it's not going to lead to the finish, right? It's unsportsmanlike, and maybe that's what he was trying to, restrict. Rather than like somebody, well, Arn did punch him, didn't he?
Arn just decked him.
Yeah, maybe no real explanation for that. So you're right. Jackie from Orlando says, I haven't watched it in a few weeks, but this episode got me to catch up and tune in. This was a one-match show, and for the most part, I feel the Blood and Guts match was a lot of meandering around and punching. My favorite spot was a Spanish Fly with Sammy and Spears. I think I would have overall been more affected by the match if we didn't get Blood on Dynamite with the frequency that we did. On a positive side, I do think the match accomplished many things in writing Jericho off and elevating MJF to super heel status. I imagine he takes the AEW title off of whoever eventually beats Omega.
Trent writes, I was at the show live tonight. I'm fully vaccinated and had 5 days off work, so I drove about 900 miles from Houston to Jacksonville for the show. All of the matches for hour one were pre-taped and aired off the screen to the crowd for the live audience. The Derby segment was the only thing live during the whole first hour. Tony Khan announced this to the live crowd 5 minutes before the show started and offered refunds or being able to come back next week for just $20. Neither does me much good, but hey, the main event was incredible. Judas was like a religious experience. Daly's Place was a great venue, and there are literally no bad seats in the building. Would love to come back for another show someday.
I guess I didn't realize that they didn't announce to the crowd that this would be what it was until 5 minutes prior.
I think it was made clear, this was known like a week ago, and my understanding is that those that bought tickets, it was like known to ticket buyers. But I mean, maybe in his case, it was not as clear.
When they announced that this would be a one match show, was this what they meant? That the live audience?
I guess it is. Like when Tony Schiavone did that initial promotion on TV was a one match event. I guess this is kind of what they meant, even though it wasn't going to be a one match television presentation.
Yeah, and probably goes without saying, but I mean, the likely reason why they did all this was because of the ring setup.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we go up next to this person, Matthew, who says, I'm not sure about everyone else, but the picture-in-picture really took me out of the later portion of the main event. I was really enjoying the start of the match, but they kept going to commercial. I understand that's part of the show, but it was just different with this presentation than compared to, say, a TNT title match where it doesn't bother me, or even the Lights Out match. Also, is QT on the level now where he can kick out of the Crossroads? Looks like he's challenging Kenny after Double or Nothing. QT? No, I don't think so. I mean, it's the end of like a blood, the biggest feud in a personal grudge. I would give him a Crossroads.
Jake, even though I'm not the biggest fan of gimmick matches, I like the match, and the finish with the Inner Circle surrendering was brilliant creative. The ending could have been executed better, but I like that no one submitted. Inner Circle surrendered, so Jericho won't get hurt, which makes sense. Wardlow, I thought, looked like a beast, and MJF continues to trek towards that top spot. The commercials took it out for me at times, and that was the only negative. And he really enjoyed the promotion of Moxley and Nagata, giving this 9 Crimson Masks out of 10.
Sean from Toronto says, the Blood and Guts match had a good start, but was marred by too many commercial breaks, even with picture-in-picture. And the finish just annoyed me, though perhaps that was the point. Also, I thought we were getting a full hour for the match, and then they have 2 back-to-back promo segments beforehand. Perhaps they should have held this off for the pay-per-view.
Let's go here to Bruce. The tone on Twitter seems to be that the main event wasn't nearly as gory as promised, but outside of Khan bringing Necro Butcher out of retirement, I'm not sure what else could have been done. The Blood and Guts match itself started fantastically, with Guevara stealing the show, but it did lose a bit of energy towards the end. While a necessary evil, the commercial breaks broke up the rhythm, and the match could have perhaps been more clearly structured around them. On paper, I'm perfectly happy with the end coming via MJF supposedly threatening Jericho's life, but a rather unspectacular fall into pillows totally undercut the Inner Circle being willing to lose the match to protect their leader.
What sort of gore could there have been?
I thought it. I mean, that to me was more than delivered upon. Of like, what are you looking to do more than what they did? I mean, you had 2 guys like bleeding buckets. I'm not even like, I'm not big on blood to begin with. Like, I don't think that that's something that I'm crazy about seeing to begin with, but that seems to be people's litmus test for what a big blow off match has to entail.
I mean, I suppose they have nobody to blame but themselves for calling the match blood and guts, right? Like, I guess
we saw a lot of guts from Sammy Guevara.
Yes, we did. For me, I guess I was just expecting I was expecting War Games, and I wasn't expecting, exploding like fluorescent tubes or anything like that. Like how much more gorier were people expecting? We had like 3 people do blade jobs, 3 or 4 people do blade jobs, but yeah, I don't know.
I think when you look at the history of wrestling on cable television, like AEW has pushed the line pretty significantly this year when it comes to violent presentations.
They have, yes. And then on the one that was promised to be the most violent, it came short.
Dreaded pay-per-view.
Yeah. We go to Jesse, who says, so blood and guts. The match was good, but I think the commercial breaks really hurt the match, and for some reason, the ending was kind of anticlimactic. I don't know what I was expecting, but it seemed underwhelming. I think if they do this again, it needs to be on pay-per-view so the commercial breaks won't affect it. As far as matches go, I think the Britt Baker Thunder Rosa match is still better than this one as far as match quality and violence. Do you think that the next time they do it, they'll wait for pay-per-view, John?
Blood and guts?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. You could do either. I don't think like one necessarily trumps the other. I thought it was, again, it's kind of hard not knowing where the direction is for Double or Nothing. I'd say this: if they were going to come back with Jericho and MJF so quickly, I mean, maybe that's what necessitated doing this now. If you have a bigger plan for Double or Nothing. But for the future, I think you could do either. I think you could do this as a television event for the number. But just from a presentation standpoint, I think it's pretty clear from the feedback, pay-per-view, you eliminate commercial breaks, and that would play a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Noah from Vaughn, say what you want about the ending, but I will never bash AEW for making sure a bump from that height is done safely, given what happened to Matt Hardy last year. The Blood and Guts match really delivered, and I thought both Sammy Guevara and MJF came out of it looking like major stars, which seems to make sense given they are primed to be big parts of AEW's long-term future. Really looking forward to the possibility of Omega Cassidy at Double or Nothing with a full house in attendance. I don't disagree with Noah. Like, if that's, I think it's fair for people to look at it and note that it was an awkward end. But if it was done because of safety precautions, like, perfection be damned. Like, that is, as you said, like, way more important that if something was not ready, then I sure as shit wouldn't be taking that bump until I knew it was okay to do it.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely a fine balance of, like, trying to maintain an illusion while still maintaining safety. And I think we have to, like, really give credit to WWE for managing to find that balance oftentimes when they attempt stunts like this. Seeing AEW attempt something so ambitious, I definitely think there are things that they, we've talked about, could have done better. Somehow, like, hidden that crash pad a little bit better. And then at some point you have to ask, was this too ambitious of a spot? Nobody asked them to, like, do, they didn't need to end this match with a giant fall off of a cage. They could have written Jericho off in any other way that they, could have, they wanted to within the cage itself. But they chose to do something really big to close the show. And, you can make the argument that maybe this was too ambitious and that maybe that's worth criticizing for them falling short. Okay, we go to Andrew, who says, I was advertised intestines and was not given said guts. 0 out of 10. Anyway, this match was great, but it did have a few dead spots in there, and maybe they wanted to do the New Japan style match where longer equals better in their minds. It seemed like the match peaked early and then hit a lull. The biggest issue with the match was the final spot, and the bump onto the pillows and the seal-painted cardboard looked a little hokey. It seems AEW has issues with their props department and might need a new guy to work on this stuff. Great show overall.
All right, I'm going down here to Ben from Vancouver. The main event was everything I wanted out of a War Games match, not the Spotfest BS NXT versions of the match. NXT, I think, has put on some fantastic War Games since they've introduced them. Like, those have been some excellent matches going back to 2017. I think the finish was pretty flat. The idea was good, but the execution was a bit off. They needed to put this injury for Jericho over seriously, or else it could risk being a Canyon-type WCW waste of a bump. The match was great. Finish was off, but that was by far the loudest I've heard a crowd since the pandemic, and I think this match really gave Guevara a massive spotlight. Rest of the show was solid. I hope QT can now go back to dark. He just doesn't have it. Miro and Omega both had good promos, and I think that next week's show on paper looks better than this week. 8 out of 10.
Let's close off here with B from New York, who says it's a bit of a problem when the announcers are finishing the show on something that's supposed to look like a threat to Jericho's career, and Shivani is already talking about Jericho coming back for revenge. Otherwise, I found the match to be good, but not great. I'm not apt to criticize commercials because they're a part of the show, but it seemed off to miss the big Wardlow entrance and the entire sequence that got them to the top of the cage. It was also kind of strange that the Inner Circle were so worried about Jericho's possible fall that they didn't even bother running up to get him after the bell rang. Seems like after months of not trusting MJF, that would be something they'd do. That said, the match did a great job of making MJF look like one of the top dogs in AEW, and these are moments where Guevara really gets to shine. And of course, it lived up to Blood and Guts, even though I could have lived without most of the chair headshots. As a one-man show, it definitely gets a passing grade. The rest of the show was mostly skippable to me, but I'm glad after a year we're finally getting the Miro everyone wanted.
Yeah, I will say over the past week with Masa Kitamiya with the head-to-head headbutt on Keiji Muto and then the chair shot tonight, stuff I certainly don't ever need to see again.
Ospreay Shingo.
They did that in the Ospreay Shingo match too. And it's like, I feel 5 years from now, I'll be singing the same song that I've been singing forever. But there you go. That was Dynamite, the Blood and Guts edition. So thanks to everyone for joining us, all patrons that were on live tonight. It was fun to have all of you join us for this Wednesday edition. Again, Double Ice Cap and Espresso members get to have live access to Rewind-A-Raw and Rewind-A-Dynamite every Monday and Wednesday, 15 minutes after the show ends. And then all patrons, welcome Friday.
And if you're a Double Ice Cap or Espresso patron, I will be sending you a signed postcard to anywhere in the world. So now is a great time to join at postwrestlingcafe.com.
Look at that. Anywhere in the world, Wai Ting delivers. So that's it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we will speak with you later this week.